not to share my experiences because I would be easily identifiable, which is why I'm saying it's, I'm not opposed to the idea. Sure. What I'm saying is that we need to take that into account from the person's perspective.
So I think we need to be able to give them both at the end of the day with that compartmentalization.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So one other thing I would add to that whole conversation is we would have to figure out what the public records issue is with that, right? Mm-hmm. So if the data is actually being collected and it's identifying departments, but we're saying, well, we're only going to give that to the executive director of the racial equity panel, we may or may not be able to do that in the sense of saying this is off limits to the general public who might want to know which departments are doing what. Because I don't think once you collect it, it's public record.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's the other piece.
Which is probably going to apply to a lot of the work that the executive director is doing.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we'd envision with the executive director is a model that's similar to the one I just explained with the police. Mm-hmm. Is what are the 2 or 3 major data points within your business process, whatever your business is across the state, where there's a high level of discretion and the impact of those decisions are huge.
Right. So it could be it's the decision at 6 months whether to retain the person or whether to put them on probation.
Absolutely.
or move them forward. That's certainly
that's definitely
a discretion point.
Right.
It's a huge discretion point.
And what's the race? What's the race demographics of the data with that particular data point? And there are others. Who decides whether a person
who gets disciplined,
performance improvement plans and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So collecting those data points and creating breakouts for race demographics in those data points, and then analyzing those data points on a recurring basis and moving forward. That's what we envision for this particular director, that type of work. It's a lot of work because this, it's a huge state. Well, not huge, it's funny. But the thing is that even the collection of that data would be compartmentalized, because at the end of the day, we would want the outcome of that to be made public, right? We would want the roll-up of that to be made public. Whereas when you start getting down to the individuals who make those decisions on a regular basis, just like we do with law enforcement, we have that data. It's just not public. You don't know who made those decisions. We have the data down with the state police down to the point to where we can look at an individual officer and the decisions that they made, race-based decisions that they made on very critical decisions over years. But it's not publicly available.
So how do you have it?
I don't. It's internal data to the state
Gotcha.
police. I would never have it.
So I'm conscious of time. This has been a great discussion, and I think it's touched on actually a lot of different aspects of our work, not just this one particular question about surveys, which is great, but maybe we should move on.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think
is that all right with everybody?
We've given the data committee lots of things to chew on.
Yes,
rich feedback.
It's fantastic.
So the next item seems like it's something we already touched on when we were reporting out on the 2018 work, and this has to do with the implicit bias training. There's already a lot in the pipeline on that one, since we've got the new employee onboarding training for state government, and that has included both implicit bias training as well as the preventing and addressing sexual harassment training. And the pilot started, the trains left the station. One of the things that the subcommittee from this council had specifically asked of CAPS was an opportunity to come in and either preview or observe some of the training as it gets developed and delivered in order to be able to provide ongoing feedback and stuff. So I didn't know to what extent members of the committee wanted to partake of that now that they have overhauled the preventing and addressing sexual harassment and they have it in a pilot model. And I think that I'm very pleased at how many of our suggestions were incorporated in there, but it would be great to see it in action. So that's one thing that I think we might want to be doing, is setting up times either individually or as a group again to go and sit in on the training. And I'm also totally open, so I know that AHS and AOT are also gonna start delivering very similar training to our new employees, starting in 2019. And we've been given the flexibility to be able to tweak the training so that it's a very similar curriculum, but can be a little bit agency specific. So.
And my understanding and what was proposed to Carrie that she was receptive to was not just implicit bias training, but any diversity related, correct? Any new
That's
things
my
that might touch on
understanding.
this council, so.
Yeah, so, and I don't know what she has in the pipeline in terms of what she's planning to offer through CAPS, either with her trainers or with outsourced trainers that's going to be in this realm, but maybe it would be good for the subcommittee to have some kind of regular meetings with her, or at least a check-in meeting early in the year to see what's in the pipeline, and we can sort stuff out.
So Lori, just point of clarification, is the pilot that started including sexual harassment
Yeah.
and implicit bias, or it's just the tweaked sexual
No,
harassment?
it's both, I believe. So it's the 4 hours of training that the Secretary of Administration, I think, is going to be mandating for all new employees starting in 2019. It was originally gonna be in early 2019, then it was gonna be like in the late winter. Now I hear it's gonna be May or June that it's gonna become effective. But the pilot is for 3 or 4 or 5 departments that are participating, and I believe it's all 4 hours of training. So we provided our entire slide deck as well as our handouts and everything from a workplace civility / implicit bias training that we provided to DHR this past June. And we've continued to tweak ours for our own workforce. And I don't know what the schedule looks like right now, but I know that the train left the station, right? And Joe, you said that you had some new employees who attended recently?
Right, that had just taken it and noted, you know, when I sat down afterwards and went through our feedback, they said most of that was incorporated, which I was really happy to hear.
Yeah, I think we just started last week. Last week.
Was that the
Okay.
one that was in Waterbury? Was that the training that was in Waterbury, for the entire state? I think Christine said she was at.
That's where it was last week.
Oh, okay. I was talking about the pilot part of
Okay.
the onboarding and retention. I don't know if that's, yeah, but just implementing that with the pilot departments above.
DHR is one of them, you said,
The
right?
HR, the tax, and labor.
So maybe our goal for 2019 is to have the council have an opportunity to review the training, both the curriculum as well as the delivery, and provide feedback, and also identify what other training is in the works, either through CAPS or other state agencies and departments. Continue with the work that we had talked about doing of creating a fairly comprehensive inventory of training that's being offered throughout state government, and maybe also a list of trainers that are being used so that we know what's out there. I'm also very open if any council members want to attend the training that we're starting to roll out to our workforce, just let me know. So we start this Friday, we have 2 more sessions next Wednesday, and then we have 4 sessions in the first 2 weeks of January. And I'm happy to share our training schedule and
If you don't mind sharing, please.
absolutely. So, and all of our training is right now at least being delivered at our training center on the Berry Montpelier Road. And some of it will definitely be another road show like we did with DMV in 2017. We already have our construction section that we're gonna go to regional offices and stuff. So for any council members who are, I don't think too many of us are in other locations in other parts of the state except.
And this is
these are-
the implicit bias, or is it?
It's both, so
Okay.
it's a 3-hour training that really weaves together implicit bias and workplace civility.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else that the training group wants to tackle?
Are there plans in 2019 to address the requirements, the training requirements that are laid out in Act 9?
So that wouldn't necessarily be in our purview, other than the fact that we could definitely work with the executive director and make available resources and recommendations, but,
I'm sorry, I was really more directing it towards the folks that represent the HR
Oh.
organization, because I think that is who was tasked with that. I think it was the racial equity director in conjunction with HR, was it not, Karen?
I think that you're right.
And there's nobody from CAPS as a training over here, but I would think that would be once the executive director is in place, they would work
Okay.
with them. But
Yeah,
I would-
presumably that person will want some data and
Exactly.
information before making a training recommendation. I don't think we'd want to make a recommendation on their behalf before they've had a chance to.
No, I think my question was more around whether or not there were plans on your calendar in 2019 to have that activity as action items for the year to plan in conjunction with the racial equity director, the training framework that would be forthcoming.
Yeah, and that would be probably a question for the
For
CAPS director,
Carrie
Carrie
Minor.
Minor, yeah. I don't want to recycle something we already talked about, but Diane, you had mentioned something about questions for the engagement survey. I just want to note that now would probably be the time to propose suggestions if you did want DHR to consider adding or modifying any questions or content of the survey, because that will be launching, I think, in late February, early March this year.
Thanks.
Is the survey available for viewing online?
There is a summary of the engagement survey responses from the last time it was administered available. I think historically, going back several years as well,
Yeah,
on
it's
the
part of the
Human
workforce.
Resources website.
Traditionally, it's been part of the workforce report, so it's usually at the end of the workforce report. This year it's separated, it's not gonna be part of the workforce report, but I believe it's going to still be published online
Yep.
when it's complete. It's gonna be a little later, like Val had said, Nellie had said, but.
Yeah, it had been administered in the fall for several years
Right.
running. This year, they decided to postpone till the spring, so.
And it's for the workforce as a whole, although there are parts of it that identify broken out by departments.
Division,
Yeah.
department
Yeah.
division,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
which is new
yeah.
last year.
So should we move on to the recruitment and retention subcommittee?
Yep.
Me?
So who else is on your subcommittee?
So Dana.
And,
Casey
and Casey.
and Tom, so,
Well, he conveniently left.
yeah, unfortunately.
So, but I think that also, you have certainly members of the council that are here that are interested and that you partner with too on some of these things, so.
Sure.
And I'm looking at Hugh and Diane especially.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Work
my
with
goal.
CWS.
Yeah, exactly, but to keep on going with the great work, great partnership of CWS. They've been, I think we've worked together really well. I think that, it's gotten to the point now where I get, directly contacted by some of the, some of the,
Thank you.
other business account managers or, employment, consultants, thank you. Directly now, because we've been able to have so many contacts at NAT, you guys have been able to kind of connect me with, so that they feel comfortable enough now that you just go directly to me and say, hey, I have a client and they're interested in this area, is there something we can, somebody we can set them up with for an informational interview or a mock interview, doing a shadowing, job shadowing, things like that, so we certainly want to continue there. I definitely want, one of the things, we're looking to do is, be much more, improve our diversity and inclusion recruiting. I would love input, from the community to see like how best we can do that, how we can target, we can improve our strategy, our recruitment strategy there. That's definitely something that's on our radar, improving our system, making it accessible to everybody. The new system, Success Factors, is out of the box, is 508 compliant, accessible in relation to the Americans with Disability Act. So that was a huge, that's a huge win for us, as opposed to having to sort of manually go in and, the system we have now, manually go in and try to fix things, documents and things like that. Now it's, our software vendor, SAP, who provides the software, provides it out of the box. So, that's one step forward for us. And then just partnering with departments, we're getting much more proactive about partnering with agencies and departments to see how we can support, like we do with AHS and other departments, how we can support their diversity and inclusion recruitment initiatives. We have two other talent acquisition specialists now, which is unique for the state. Previously, the job of this job was titled employment coordinator, when it was really just a transactional role where they just got a list of candidates from the system who said they had some qualifications and then forwarded it along to the hiring managers. Right now we have people who are actually working directly with hiring managers to strategize on how they can get better at recruitment, how they can do better. So we have a lot more assets available to us, within recruitment to help hiring managers improve their recruiting. So
we have Derek Moffett.
yeah, Derek was
Immensely helpful in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
So I have two thoughts that I don't know how or whether you want to incorporate,
Sure.
but in terms of being able to increase just the recruitment overall for state government. Curtis and the partnership have a website that actually is very, very helpful for recruitment purposes, and you're probably more than happy to share the link, but you can also talk about it. And we this year updated a document that it's part of our on-the-job training manual for women and people of color to go into highway construction, but it's also a standalone document. It's called Hiring and Retaining a Diverse Workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And it includes a lot of live links and updated links and suggestions about social media and all of those different things,
Yeah.
which I know that you're already doing a lot of that, but every little bit helps probably.
Well, we're doing it in a broad sense. We need to do a little bit better about being more intentional, I think more specific.
I'm happy to share my link, and you want to talk a little bit, Curtis, about
Sure.
the work you're doing?
Before that, I'm going to put a plug in for state police.
Yeah.
If you've not spent time with them and their restructured recruiting function, you should go and talk with them. I think the last couple of classes of troopers, they've had like up to 15% of their new recruits have been persons of color or women.
Could we invite someone to come here?
Sure, either Steve Cook or
Gary Scott?
I think it would be
Yeah.
Gary
really
Scott.
interesting.
yeah, Gary,
Talk to them.
yeah, Gary Scott, or Ingrid.
Or Ingrid.
But this is the result, their numbers are a result of about 6 years worth of work, strategic work in positioning the state police in markets where they're largely folks of color, right? So, you got good stuff happening in the state government. That's one of the places that it's really happening. The other is, we have a website that we're building out right now, but it's IamAvermonter.org. And if you're online, you can go to it right now. IamAvermonter.org. And it's a unique resource for persons of color that are considering relocating to Vermont for work, school, or retirement. We have 2 of the 5 regions built out so far. And it's a list of, not list, but profiles of Vermonters of color who talk about Vermont in their own words, unedited, and why Vermont is their home, why I call Vermont home, and with the good, the bad, the ugly, but ultimately, what everyone comes back to is quality of life. We have sections on culture, kind of multicultural Vermont, from an artistic standpoint, performing arts, visual arts, recreation, in terms of who comes to Vermont and who's already in Vermont, in terms of our association with the National Brotherhood of Skiers, or Outdoor Afro, or black cyclists, black motorcyclists, to let people know that there are in fact people already here that are fully engaged. You can go to Barry to see the Michael Jackson review band, if that's your thing. Or you can go down to JAG in Woodstock to see black playwrights show their works. So it's a work in progress. And if you're, anyway, so anyway, that's are you online yet?
Yeah, I've got it right here, looks good, yeah.
Great. Okay. So we need about $45,000 to finish building out the site. What you see there is the prototype with Champlain Valley and southeastern Vermont. We'd like to be able to complete the entire project within a year from now. And then we would make it a closed subscription site, so that employers that are committed to, and one of the things we would do would be to sort of certify for the world that, yeah, these are employers that are really focused on inclusion and equity. And this is one way that they can demonstrate that to candidates that are coming in, rather than having the deer in the headlight look of a person of color asking, well, what's like my family here? And that's where, at least in the private sector where we work, a lot of people decide not to come here based on the reaction that the interview committee or the HR director has when asked the question, so we talked a great deal about the job, my qualifications match what your needs are, but once the conversation moves off topic, in terms of, well, what's like my family here, and you choke on the question, they say, well, you're not ready for me. So, take a job someplace else. So this site was designed.
That's awesome, because I was recruiting for another company, and most of the people I was recruiting for here in Vermont, before I was here, most of the people I was recruiting for were from out of state, and that was the biggest thing, is they wanted to be connected to a community. If they're gonna be bringing their family and by themselves, coming here, the connection to the community, their community is paramount to them, with that decision whether to come or not. And exactly what you said, you can't make it a case that,
I think there's more too. I mean, I am that person, I'm that story. I've been here for 10 years now, and I came here to take a job with National Life Group. And I lasted 9 months with National Life Group. And, but I'm an anomaly because I chose to stay here anyway.
Right.
But the question is not what gets you here, it's what keeps you here.
Right.
So I want to, politely kind of push back a little bit on you, Curtis, but support you. But because I think in good conscience, I have a hard time asking somebody to come here if I don't think the conditions are right or suitable for them to really sustain here. I think, you know, not to sound pretentious, but I'm a little bit of an anomaly to have stayed here for 10 years, 8 more years than I've ever been anyplace else in my life. The conditions on the ground right here are very tenuous for people of color in this state, and we gotta be really transparent about that, and we gotta do the work to fix it so we can keep people here, not just get them here.
Yes, and I've only been here for 40 years.
Oh, it's all?
I've only been here for
You're still not a Vermonter.
And yes, there's a, you know, as with all Vermonters, we live on a spectrum. And my advice to people is if you want to be a couch potato, this is not the place to be.
Amen.
If, you know, you want easy access to the mall, if you want Grubhub, if you want, then this is not
Cracker Barrel.
But that and yes, that there's folks of color in the state of Vermont share the same challenges as folks of color everywhere. My pitch, though, is 15% of the population, wherever you go in the world, and I've traveled all over the world, lived all over the world, 15% of the population are knuckleheads.
Only 15?
Yeah, I think you're being generous.
Well, you know, I can think of a couple of countries where it is up to about 25%. But the question one has to ask oneself is, what are the other 85% doing? And if you can demonstrate that our form of government, in terms of civic engagement, in terms of town meeting, in terms of access to policymakers, access to those decision makers that affect everything from, you know, the tree warden to your school board or select board, then this is the place to be. Because you're not going to find that.
It's very true, yeah, very true.
Anyplace else. So if you want to live on a human scale, this is the place. But it has to be balanced with, you know, maybe having to get in the car and drive to Rutland from Brattleboro to see Stomp, or the Barry Opera House to see the Michael Jackson review band, or Fences at the Flynn, or, you know, so that there's a, we just had in Brattleboro, Chris McBride, you know, who's like a Grammy-winning bassist. So I mean, there's a lot of things to do here, and that's what's kept me here.
It's very positive.
Hmm?
Yeah.
It's very positive.
Yeah, it is. We can train your HR departments in how to make a pitch.
Yeah, I think the challenge is it's not traditionally the HR department that has the frontline experience with interviewing and hiring. To Bill's point, we're taking a more active role in supporting hiring managers, but it's the actual supervisors that are typically engaging in those conversations in the interview. So it kind of broadens the audience a little bit for.
Who are the people that we should be training to make it a reality?
Yeah.
So we've done it with state police, and they have an incredible track record over the last 5 or 6 years.
Which is interesting because they're struggling with recruitment in general
Right.
for state police. So the
Yes.
fact that they've had this success recruiting minority populations is actually very interesting in light of the overall market for their recruitment.
But to what end though, I guess, this is a place where I work on a daily basis. so I gotta chime in. I gotta get out of here because I gotta get back up the road, but I gotta chime in on this. The question is to what end? Why are we recruiting black and brown police officers?
To reflect the community, I would think.
Hopefully, so I can get my incarceration rates down, okay? So hopefully, so I can get my arrest rates down as well, because if they're reflective of the community, then that means their actions are gonna be reflective in a manner as such as
Correct.
that the disparities are going to reduce, correct?
Correct.
So that's where we start counting success. And so we still got some counting to do.
Understood.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I know that we're getting close to the end of the time, and we do have other on the list. And I do want to talk about something before people get out of here. I don't know what is the history of this council in terms of supporting legislation when it is like proposed legislation. But I would really, because you counsel, my guess is you're an advisory council to the commissioner, is that correct?
It's an advisory council
To
to
the
the
governor.
commissioner and to the Secretary of Administration.
Right, so sometimes there's legislation, and I anticipate that there will be some. It would be really nice to have this board or this council advise or provide, really take a position on some of those pieces of legislation. And so my hope and goal here today was really to see if you have any willingness to do that in 2019. When there is pending legislation, whether this council can take a position on it and advise the commissioner or Secretary Young or the agency of administration to take a position about some of those.
That is a novel suggestion that I'm gonna turn to Diane, because I think she and I started around the same time on the council, like around 2002-ish. And to the best of my knowledge, we have never taken a position on any legislation, but I'm not sure why not, or that there would be any problem with doing so. What do you think?
I think we could certainly take a position, and we could certainly advocate with the commissioner and the secretary of administration. I don't know, I think this is something for Tom or Rachel in terms of, you can go as a citizen to the legislature and testify on anything, anytime, regardless of your state employment. But I'm not sure that the chair of this council could go to the legislature and testify.
Right, and not so, I'm not really necessarily asking that anybody do that.
Okay.
So much that, more so that if you took a position on a piece of legislation, you could advise the people that you're supposed to advise, which is the commissioner,
Absolutely.
on that legislation.
And then we could develop, or at least discuss it in our meetings and work on that. And I think what you're suggesting would be maybe a fourth subcommittee. That's what it sounds like, maybe.
No. I'm thinking that, and we know that legislation comes up really fairly quickly, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
when there's legislation at the, in January, February, or there's a bill that there's proposed, and it directly involves equity, diversity, inclusion, state government, or whatever, the people that will be testifying there will be the HRC, the commissioner, Tom, other people. It would be nice, I think, because one of the questions is, what does this council's job is to counsel the commissioner and give advice to the commissioner. The question is, can we take positions? Can we take a position on a piece of bill and advise the commissioner to take that position on that bill?
I like that.
Commissioner, women do that, don't you?
No, see, we are,
Not
we have
allowed to do
a
politics.
special, unique to us, part of our statute that doesn't allow us to, that puts restrictions on us. But I think,
We did that by design. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean,
They
we'll
don't
talk
want
later.
women to
We'll
participate.
talk later.
It seems to me the litmus test
Yeah.
might be whether it is aligning with the governor's priority or not, and does that put us in, I mean, do we serve at the pleasure of the governor on this council, or?
Oh,
But I
Some
think
of
we
us
could
do.
advise and
Well,
influence the
we
governor.
do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think taking
That's
a
all.
position, I
Absolutely.
think that's
Right.
all we're,
That's all I'm saying. Could you advise the governor
Yeah.
or the commissioner to take a certain position. And it's not that they have to take your advice, but it would be great if the council voted or agreed that when we look at this bill, we think this is a good idea. And we would like DHR or the commissioner or the governor to support it or be against it. Because I think that would be a really useful thing for this council to do.
Yeah, I think
I'd like to
so.
see that happen.
where you hung up is whether it's public, you're taking a public position as a committee, that might get into a slippery slope versus advising the powers that be feels absolutely like
Right.
fair.
Well, I don't know what goes into the report, which I think is the only public piece, right? Although we're being recorded today. I don't know what is public or not, but I
I
guess.
think everything that we do is public.
Okay.
And I think so, we have 2 reports per year, and the first one is due in mid-January, and it's basically our accomplishments and our goal setting for the next season. And then in April, we submit an updated kind of EEO plan for state government in general. And both of those documents, I believe, are on the website. The website isn't real updated. I think it's still got some 2017 stuff, including the roster. But pretty much our meetings are all